the importance of self-reliance and stepping out, as Paula said, not simply on faith, but with faith, but not in foolishness. And so this is really good. And this is church at its best. W.E.B. Du Bois, in his book, The Souls of Black Folk, has a chapter entitled The Faith of Our Fathers. And he talks about church at its best. And he says the church at its best is a church that creates networking opportunities for people and creates connectivity so that people can trade with each other and get their businesses started. And that's what we want to do. There are established entrepreneurs here at St. Stephen Church. There are potential and emerging entrepreneurs here at St. Stephen Church. And because of our webpage, we want to drive all of our members. We have 20,000 people who are on the road. We don't see them, but they're on the road at St. Stephen Church. If we can drive those 20,000 people to the businesses that are here at St. Stephen Church, then that is turning dollars over in our own community. For example, if I need my car detailed, I know who to go now to get my car detailed. If I need trees trimmed, I know to go to my brother, who's a part of this church, to get my trees trimmed. Whatever I need, I should think first of the persons in St. Stephen Church who can provide service with excellence. And if you provide service with excellence, for example, I want to show you some pictures of what's going on in our gymnasium. One of the leading prep schools in this city is St. Francis. St. Francis, the quality of education at St. Francis is equal to Trinity, St. X. It's a great school. But they needed a gym to play basketball in, to have their games in and their practices. Now, here we are in the California community. And St. Francis, most of the kids who go to St. Francis, their families live in the East End. But guess what gym they're renting? In the hood. So that's dollars that's being attracted to West Louisville, to the California Community Center. That creates jobs. Okay, so we're excited about this summit, and I'm excited because we have as our next speaker a man who is my favorite public intellectual. I follow his webpage. I look forward to reading everything he writes, everything he says, all of his videos, all of his books. This man has been quite influential in my thinking. I cannot think of anyone who has his finger on the pulse of where our community needs to go like Dr. Boyce Watkins. And he consented to come, and I'm so glad that he is here, and I'm going to step out of the way and allow him to come. Brothers and sisters, won't you now welcome to this platform my brother and my friend, Dr. Boyce Watkins.
What's happening? Yes. Mic check. My mic fell off a little bit, so let me know if you can't hear me or something goes wrong. Okay. We had a wardrobe malfunction earlier, so I don't want any embarrassment. Okay. First and foremost, I have to stop and talk about how I love coming back to St. Stephen's. This is my favorite place on earth, and I was thinking about it this morning. And I don't like to say things that aren't true. But I tried to think of a pastor that I've seen anywhere in the country that's better than the pastor you have right here. And I couldn't think of anybody. I really believe that you might have the best pastor in the United States. right now, we're working on this movie about Black Wall Street. If you don't know the story about Black Wall Street, the Greenwood section of Tulsa, Oklahoma, that was burned down after they achieved prosperity, you need to make sure you know that story. We need to understand that the public school system will never teach that story to our children on a regular basis because they don't want you to know stories like that. It's not your oppressor's job to teach you your history. That's your job. And I was thinking about that story because I thought about Pastor Cosby and I thought about how the message that he shares about the importance of cooperative economics and us targeting our money toward one another, how that was very similar to the thinking of the individuals who created Black Wall Street. In case you don't know, Black Wall Street wasn't just surviving. Surviving is one thing. They were actually thriving far above and beyond many of the communities that surrounded them. This was 1921, and 5 or 6 people in the community owned airplanes. They had hotels and barbershops and churches and restaurants and everything you can imagine. And all of this was built not just because they had a little bit of money. Many of the founders of Black Wall Street had plenty of opportunities to go work for other people and to do quite well for themselves. That wasn't what built Black Wall Street. We have plenty of black folks that have money. You turn on TV, you see Jay-Z and Steve Harvey, Beyonce. You see a lot of black folks with money. But it's not the money. It is the mentality that comes with the money. It is the creative and intelligent and assertive use of money that allows you to build something that thrives and grows long after you're gone. And so when I think about what's being done here at St. Stephen's in terms of planting the seeds, I love that analogy because not just your pastor, but also the movement that everyone in this church is participating in. This is something that people will be talking about 150 years from today. And it's very, very important to understand that. And in case you don't know, I don't say things unless I really mean them, unless I believe them to be true. I'm going to quote the great philosopher James Brown one more time. I love when the brother brought up James Brown, because people don't actually know James Brown was very, very concerned about the black community. He wasn't just a singer. He was actually a person who knew that power that he had was meant to be used for something greater than just getting him rich and him having a lot of girlfriends and all this other stuff. In fact, one of the things that he said to Al Sharpton when he mentored Al, and Reverend Sharpton mentioned it to me, he said, okay, Rev, so you're a household name now. Everybody knows who you are. He said, now what are you going to do with that? And so ultimately, I think that my favorite quote from James Brown is actually just say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. And that's a very simple thing, but it's very important because we live in a society that does not teach us to be proud of who we are. You can go back to very simple statements like the statement by Reverend Jesse Jackson where he would always say, I am somebody. And I used to think, oh, he's just saying that same phrase over and over again, and it's just polite political speech. But then I really thought about that, and I realized that when I realized I was somebody, that changed everything about how I thought about building wealth, about building my career, about building my life, about building myself as a black man in this society. I realized that if I am somebody, then I'm somebody even if you don't give me your applause and your approval. I stopped looking to my oppressor to validate me, to certify me, to tell me that I was educated, or to tell me that I was a worthy human being. And when I got away from that, I stopped chasing things that were going to take me away from my community and take me away from the productive activity necessary in order to build our community. Because the thing about it, in terms of mindset that we have to have, when you talk about building wealth and building a prosperous community, is we have to have people that are committed to being builders. See, we don't have a generation of builders yet. We have to create that. We have a generation, several generations of people that thought that you work hard, you go to school, so that one day a white man would give you a job. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized a job is not something someone is supposed to give you. A job is something that you should be able to create on your own. And that is a very important principle within your community survival. That's a security issue. Because the thing is, you don't want to depend on your oppressor to get the things that you need. You don't want to become addicted to commodities that you do not control. If you go out here in the street and you look at any relationship between a pusher and an addict, Who has the power in that relationship? It's not the addict. But unfortunately, many of us are addicted to money. We're addicted to materialism. We're addicted to all these European brands that don't even hire black people. And we have to call it for what it is. It's a mental illness. And so I'm going to back up a little bit and kind of give you the framework in terms of understanding where I'm coming from and why I say some of the things I say that I'm going to say to you today. Whenever I talk about money, I always start off by thinking about my grandmother, Felicia, who died last year. And she lived not too far from here, spent most of her life in Louisville, and didn't like it when we would talk about the old days and stuff like that. She didn't have many good things to say about her experience as a young black woman on the streets of Louisville. And we used to talk a lot about Louisville Cardinals basketball. In fact, I remember the last conversation we had, one of the last conversations, right after she found out she had cancer. And we knew that it was the end, and it was right after Louisville had won their championship. And I'll always think about that. It was one of the greatest days of my life. And so I talked to her. I said, Mama, we did it. I said, it's been 27 years. We finally got another one. And so she was. So we were really excited about it. And when she died, she got buried in a cardinal red dress. And she didn't leave me much. My other relatives kind of ate up all her money and everything. They just took it, and I didn't want no money. I didn't care about that. But she left me a framed picture that had her Louisville Cardinals sweatshirt in the middle with some pictures on it. And so that was kind of a reflection of our relationship and how Louisville basketball was just such a big part of who we were as people. And the other thing that was interesting about my grandmother was that I observed her as my first finance professor. Even though I had a PhD in finance, I would talk to my grandmother for financial advice because I said, this is amazing that you have this woman who got divorced at the age of 19, raised 5 kids by herself, never made more than $25,000 a year, but never owed money to anybody, was completely debt-free, had AAA credit. People would come to her to borrow money. And it is very strange. It's a juxtaposition to what we typically see. You don't typically expect a single black mother with 5 kids to be doing well financially. And so I began to study, in her last years, I began to study her thinking and really learn a lot about how she viewed money and how money worked. And I actually wrote an entire book about it, and I'm almost done with it. And as I got to talking to her about it, one of the things I really learned about money and wealth building is that 99% of wealth building is psychological. A lot of people think that it's about how much money you make, that you have to make money or have money in order to get more money and all this other stuff. And I just found that really wasn't true. That really how you think about money is important. And that actually led me to explore it even further. When I was studying in school for my PhD, I studied financial psychology because I wanted to understand how people think about money. Because one thing I observed is that money controls people's lives in so many ways. Most people, when they get out of bed every morning, they're getting out of bed for some financial reason. There's some financial incentive that lies behind almost everything they do. People will tend to respect you more when you have money. People want to date you more if you have money. Even today, I saw this clip that we shared on our website about where Steve Harvey, the comedian, as funny as he is and brilliant as he is, he made a joke where somebody asked him, they said, well, Steve, what do you say when you're at a cocktail party and people talk about things that you don't understand or things you don't know, when they talk about history and you're not interested? And he said, well, what I tell them is, I don't give a damn about slavery. And I thought, did he say, I don't give a damn about slavery? And so I'm sure it was a misstep. I'm sure that he slipped up. He maybe in the moment he was trying to be funny, but I didn't think it was funny because there were people, your ancestors gave a damn about you. So So how can you even make that joke during Black History Month? But here's the funny thing, and again, that's still ongoing. I'm sure at some point Steve will apologize, and I will accept the apology. But the interesting thing to me, because remember, people make mistakes, and it's okay. It's okay as long as you apologize. But the thing that was interesting to me was that I saw people that were even justifying this, that were saying, oh, well, you know, you're taking it out of context, he didn't really mean it, et cetera, et cetera. And it was interesting because I think that there were a lot of people who felt that if you make money, if you are rich, then anything goes. You can say anything you want, you can do anything you want to other people, and if you're getting money, then it's all okay. Money over everything. That's a mentality that was taught to us in a capitalist society. And free enterprise is okay. Capitalism can be okay to a point, but blood-sucking capitalism, capitalism where you are convinced to sell your entire soul, is unacceptable. It will leave you empty. And capitalism, if you ask me to describe capitalism and money, is it good or bad? I'm not going to say it's good or bad. It's just powerful. It's like fire. Fire isn't good or bad. It depends on whether you're cooking food that you're going to eat or if you're burning somebody alive. Right? Fire can be the most horrible thing in the world, or it can be a lifesaver, depending on how you use it. Well, wealth building is the same way. Money can either liberate you and allow you to live a life that you never thought you'd live, allow you to create a prosperous community with liberated individuals, or money can enslave you, where every single day, everything you do is dictated by the dollar bill. It's guiding every decision that you make. And I don't know about you, but that's not really how I want to live. And so, what I want to ask you to do with me, real quick, is I want us to kind of do a mental exercise. And I want you to imagine that I just built this big time machine that you're going to step into. And in this time machine, as you walk in, we're going to go back to the past. And I want to set the dial for us to go back 300 years to the year 1715. Instead of 2015, we're going to be in 1715. So at that time, slavery was in full effect. Black people didn't have many options in life. Black people were experiencing part of the 400-year Holocaust that has existed in America, and it is a Holocaust. And the idea of us being free, doing what we do today, was not only not visible to anybody at that time, or most of us at that time, but it wasn't even imaginable to many of us at that time. So, but at the same time, you've gone back in time. So even though you're black, you've seen a different vision. You're from 2015, so you know that black people deserve better than what we were getting at that time. You know that there is a world in which we can live free. You know there is a world in which we have the opportunity to be prosperous and to be liberated and to be educated and all the things that many of us are doing right now. And so let's say that you go and you're talking to the other slaves on the plantation, and you tell them about this vision that you have of a free and prosperous society where black people are allowed to do what they want to do and to actually get education and get money and things like that. Remember, at that time, it was even illegal for a slave to learn how to read. How do you think that most of the slaves would respond to you? They would look at you like you were crazy. Like you were out of your mind, like you're just making things up and you're unrealistic. You would not be, to some people, to a few people, you might be considered a hero, but to most you might be an outcast. Because talking like that will get everybody killed. You won't have any friends on the plantation. Somebody will tell the massa on you. And so, if you think about that though, and you imagine yourself in that situation, and you're enduring this unbearable torture that you know you don't deserve, you know you deserve better because your self-esteem was built that way, one of the things you might try to do is you might try to escape. You might try to get away from the plantation, take as many people as you can with you, and get out of that because you know you deserve better. Well, there were slaves like that on the plantation. There were visionaries at that time who saw a better future for black America. There were people who believed and knew that we deserve better than that we didn't just deserve equality, we deserve complete freedom. And those individuals, like you, would be outcast on the plantation. They got in trouble. The master would put them in front of everybody and beat them senseless. The master would chop off their body parts. If you were a man, they might emasculate you in front of your son so that they can engage in what they call buck breaking. which is maybe make you wear women's clothing and maybe rape you or maybe do things to you to totally annihilate your masculinity in front of the people that respect you, so that your son grows up realizing that being a strong black man will get him into trouble too. And they still do that to this day. Look at Hollywood. Look at how many black men and black actors are being told to put on dresses for comic relief. It's completely disproportionate to their representation in Hollywood. We're 13% of the population, but we make up a good 80% of the major Hollywood actors that have been told to put on a dress. There is a history to that. Black masculinity has always been a threat to national security. So if you think about that and you imagine that first runaway slave on the plantation, that first visionary, understand that even though that visionary may not have succeeded in their quest for freedom, they planted a seed. So this is going full circle now. I'm not just talking in different directions. I'm bringing it back. They planted a seed. So maybe if they didn't escape off the plantation, there was somebody who was inspired to see a bigger vision because they saw someone else who believed in something bigger. And then maybe they tried in the next generation. Maybe they did a little bit better. Maybe they went in a different direction. They figured some things out. And then hundreds of years later, we are where we are today. So my argument is that you cannot have the first black president without the first runaway slave. So, let's fast forward and come back to 2015. Now, instead of comparing 2015 to 1715, let's compare 2015 to 2315. Let's look at the future. Let's understand that there is a reality out there that we cannot see in front of us today. There will never be a day in your lifetime where you will go out into the black community and the sun will be shining and everything will be wonderful and you won't see all the ratchetness. You won't hear about a little baby being shot. You won't see a rapper on TV disrespecting black women and talking about killing other black men. That day probably won't come in our lifetime. But we're planting a seed that goes for several generations, not just our own. So it's not all about what we're going to see in our lifetime. It's about what our great-great-great-great-grandchildren are going to see 300 years from today. Without the seed planters, there will be no harvest. So I want you to join me and become my fellow runaway slaves. Let's run away from this ignorance. We're going to deal with the ostracism. When I go talking about what I talk about, there's a whole lot of people that won't listen. If me and Lil Wayne are speaking in the same high school on the same day, everybody's going to go listen to him, and about 10 kids will come listen to me. Ignorance is winning. That's just the reality. This is created by media outlets that are not owned by us, and it is all part of a grand, consistent scheme to keep us where people think that we belong. Think all of this is an accident, then you're sadly mistaken. After the civil rights movement, people got very nervous. They said, what happens when black people are saying it loud and they're proud of who they are and actually want something better for their children and demand equal rights and demand economic prosperity, demand education, demand access to their real history? That's a very scary thing for a lot of people. And so one of the many tools that are used to control us are these systems. Media is one thing. A lot of these ignorant rappers on the radio are not sanctioned by black people. They were not selected by black people. They were selected by big corporations that are not run by black people. The educational system. Malcolm X told us a long time ago that only a fool will let his oppressor educate his children. So, it's okay to let your kids go to school. I'm not saying that you should take them out of school, but when your child comes home from school, that's when you begin the real education. I call it extrication. Think about the word extricate. Extricate means to escape from something, to break away from something. Extra means in addition to. So you've got the evenings, you've got the weekends, you've got the summer times. That's when you educate your child on the things they need to know to be successful black men and black women in this society. That's when you teach that young black boy how to be an adequate husband and father so he doesn't end up being one of these baby makers that we got running through our community, spreading diseases and dismay amongst all these young women. That's when you teach them how to have their own business, so they don't grow up thinking that I'm going to work really hard so that one day somebody will give me a job. I'm sorry, I hate to tell you this, but black men don't get jobs. Black male unemployment has skyrocketed for decades. If white unemployment was half as high as black male unemployment, people would be rioting in the streets. But because it's happening to black men, nobody cares. And if you want to kill a community, you kill the family. If you want to kill the family, you chop off the head of the man. And that's what's been happening in America in the last 40 years with the war on drugs and mass incarceration. Drugs were put into the black community to distract us from the energy that created the civil rights movement. And as a result, the plan worked perfectly. We were the ones getting addicted to the drugs. We were the ones getting incarcerated over the drugs. We were the ones being killed in drug-related violence. We were the ones being left behind and abandoned by parents who were affected by this drug-related violence and culture and everything else. And as a result, many parts of our community are a mess. They are struggling. And so, what I think we have to remember is that the cavalry is not coming. Nobody's going to save us. Except for us.
That's right.
We have to instill this into our children. Now, I'm going to talk about something that I want to lay out as an easy acronym to help us understand this. Most of us know that freedom isn't free. Most of us know that you have to pay the cost for your freedom. If you're not willing to pay the cost for your freedom, then you don't deserve to be free. If you look throughout the history of the world, in any country, any liberated people has had to be prepared to fight for their freedom and their liberty. Even in the United States, as horrible as some of the things, as horrible as the atrocities have been in the U.S., if you look at U.S. history and some of the things that Europeans did in order to control this country, it will make your stomach turn. But one thing that I have to give them credit for is that they understood the importance of fighting for what they believed in and fighting for what they deserve or believe they deserve. So the cost model is spelled C-O-S-T. Can we go to the next slide? Let's start with the letter C. C stands for contribute. If we do not support black institutions, nobody will. The weirdest thing in the world to me is when people don't want to give any money to the NAACP, but they get mad because the NAACP does not represent their interests. Well, the NAACP, unfortunately, like any organization, is going to represent the interests of the people that are paying their bills. And who pays the bills of the NAACP? Big corporations. And in many cases, these big corporations are making the donations so that they won't be put under the spotlight for their racist practices. The biggest donators to the NAACP in many cases are corporations that have done the most discrimination out of all the companies out there. They realize that a donation to the NAACP is cheaper than actually making things right. So in many cases, you really have the crooks running the police station. Because basically they know if we pay the top people off, then we don't have to deal with the masses. This is a tactic that is used in terms of money controlling people. This is used all over the world. If you go to many African countries, you go to Nigeria, with all the oil and the natural resources Nigeria has, they should have no poverty whatsoever. But what unfortunately has occurred is due to corruption, you have leaders at the top who are getting filthy rich from European companies that will pay the people at the top so they can extract the oil out of the ground and give nothing to the people. So poverty in Nigeria is rampant, it's everywhere. And that very same tactic is used in the African American community. Unfortunately for us, and until we do something about this, it is important for us to understand that many of our most respected leaders and institutions have been bought and paid for by other people. And now, the corruption can be called out, but at the same time, it is also our fault for not stepping up and supporting the institutions that we care about. And so if you're part of St. Stephen's Church, supporting this institution, believing in the values of your pastor and the values of the church as a whole is a very important principle to teach to your children, that we are all soldiers in this battle. None of us can sit on the sidelines and just soak up the benefits. So every month, I encourage you to give 1 to 3% of your income to an institution in addition to your church. So after you give your money to St. Stephen's, you tithe here, then you go outside of St. Stephen's and find another institution to support as well. And actually, I asked him to move to the next slide, but that was actually my fault. I made a mistake because I actually want to talk a little bit more about the contribute factor. The other thing about the contribute issue is this. When you talk to your children about money, which everybody should talk to their children about money. Unfortunately, many of us don't do that. Maybe because we think it's grown-up stuff. We don't want to worry the kids, and we don't think they're ready for it. But I think it's a principle. It's the kind of thing you want to start talking to them about before they even learn how to speak. One of my girls is pregnant right now. I'm going to go to a baby shower after I'm done speaking. And I told her we're going to start teaching that baby while he is in your stomach. Okay? Because that's where education begins. Education does not start when the child is 5, 6, 7 years old. It starts in the womb. And we cannot also pretend like the job of the mother is not the most important job in the universe. Because if mothers stopped doing their jobs, our society would absolutely crumble. The mother is the first teacher. The mother decides the size of the child's universe. So the role of the mother can never be underemphasized. So when you talk to your child about money, make sure that they understand that their goal is not just to go out and get a job. You want your child to know how to create a job. So that even if they go work for somebody else, they know how to build a side hustle. They know how to make sure they've got multiple streams of income. Because you're never financially secure if you're getting all your money from one source. Because in case you don't know, corporations will hand you the pink slip and you wouldn't even know that it was coming. Next slide, please. The O. O stands for own. Own something. And I mentioned don't teach your kids to get a job, teach them how to create a job. It's very important for all of us to know the importance of owning the land on which you stand. You see, ownership it's about more than just money. I can tell you that once I started to own things, I did actually make more money, and that was nice. But there wasn't a price I could really put on the power that I felt being my own man, knowing that I wasn't being pimped every day, knowing that I could get up and do what I wanted to do and not be afraid or ashamed of being who I am. I have seen folks in corporate America literally lose their mind because they feel trapped by the racism. They come to me and they say, I'll give a speech at a corporation or something, and they'll say, Dr. Boyce, it always happens. Black employees will pull me to the side and they'll say, Dr. Boyce, you won't believe the stuff that they're doing to us here at this company. And I feel so bad for them. I hear the pain. And the fundamental truth, though, is that this is not your company. You didn't build this. This was not really built for you. And you can't move into somebody else's house and expect to be able to move around the furniture. It doesn't work that way. And where our mindset gets in the way of that freedom that we should have is that many of us believe in chasing the biggest paycheck and don't really take pride in owning our own stuff. But there's a pride and a dignity with that. In fact, I got inspiration when I saw a documentary that I highly recommend on Netflix. It's called The West by Ken Burns, and it talks about how the West was conquered, and they barely talk about black people in this documentary, but you can get inspiration from anybody. In fact, when I talked to Minister Farrakhan, he's been accused of being anti-Semitic, but he repeatedly mentioned that if we want to understand cooperative economics, he says, study a lot of what the Jewish community does with their money and how they support each other. He said it's very important. So I believe in getting inspiration everywhere. One of the things I saw that really got me was they showed these Midwesterners who settled in Kansas back when there was hardly anybody else there, when they were the first ones to arrive, and they didn't have anything. They literally built their houses out of side. And they'd have one cow, and they'd be barefoot, maybe because they couldn't afford shoes. They'd take this picture, and nobody would smile in the pictures. They'd look real mean and man or whatever. And they said these people were taking pictures like this because they were very proud of what they had. You might look at them and say, oh my gosh, these people are so poor, they're really struggling. But they were actually proud of what they had. If they had a cow, they would put the cow in the picture to say, look at me, I'm a man. I've got my wife and my children, my mud house, and my cow. And it's mine. There's pride that comes with owning your own stuff, and it has to go beyond the size of your paycheck. You cannot evaluate the quality and the worthiness of another human being or of yourself by how much money you make. Because if all you see is the bottom line, you're going to miss 95% of the picture.
When I've had conversations with people that work with BET and we talk about the BET Awards, and I say, well, why are you promoting certain artists that are talking about killing other black men and doing all these other horrible things, just staying high and drunk all the time, and impressionable kids are watching this and they're learning lifestyle from these images you're portraying, and this is unacceptable. How can you as a black man, as an educated black man, knowingly put these images in front of black children and think that this is okay? And you know what they always say? They say, yeah, but did you see how much money we made last year? We had 10 million viewers. Did you see the car that I drive? Do you see our profitability statements every year? We're more profitable than we've ever been. And that's sick to me. That's sad to me. It's scary to me that we can justify any horrible behavior by the size of the paycheck. So when you're making your own decisions in your own life, understand the pride and the value of ownership. Even if you have a small business that makes $2, that's your business. And when you die and you pass things down to your children, they cannot inherit a job. I don't care how many years you've been with IBM. When you die, they're going to replace you within a week. And they will not replace you with your child. That's not yours. But when you have a business, you can give that to somebody. And here's the other thing. Here's the other security issue that comes with making your own money. When I first started my business, it was scary to become an entrepreneur because I wasn't raised that way. I was raised to grow up and maybe get a job at GE or Ford. Remember, I grew up in Louisville, and back then that's where everybody worked. And now I guess it would be UPS or something. And so I did this entrepreneurial thing, didn't know what the heck I was doing, totally screwed everything up, made a lot of mistakes, but I did my best. I believed I am somebody and believed that it was going to work out, and faith held it together for me, and eventually things started to work out. But it was horrible for the longest time, but I stuck with it. And one of the reasons that I felt it was important to make my own money was because I knew that I was trying to be a controversial black man. I knew that at some point, when I looked at my predecessors, when I looked at the people I admired, everybody from Cornel West and Michael Eric Dyson, going back to the Dr. Kings and Muhammad Ali's of the world, I realized a common trend. I noticed that whenever a person of color gets out of line, the first thing they do is they cut off your money supply. They try to cripple you economically. And if you look at U.S. foreign policy, that's what the United States does. Whenever they're mad at another country, they impose economic sanctions. And so I told my brother, I said, we've got to prepare ourselves for this. It wasn't about trying to get rich and drive a Bentley. It was about trying to survive so that I wouldn't have to fold and buckle because somebody told me that I wouldn't be able to feed my family or pay my bills. So we structured our businesses in a certain way where we were making money from multiple sources and we owned everything that we did and all this other stuff. And then it was tested. It was tested. And it was tested during the Obama election. Bill O'Reilly, this horrible person on Fox News, he made a statement about Michelle Obama. He made a joke about lynching Michelle Obama. He said something about having a lynching party against Michelle Obama because of something she said. Now, it was an offhand remark, but my concern was that death has always been a real possibility for the first family. That's not a joke. And you really don't need to use the words Michelle Obama and lynch in the same sentence. That's totally unacceptable. So we did what we do. We did a little protest. I reached out to the people through social media and said, here's the private phone numbers of Bill O'Reilly and all of his producers, and I want you to all call them and tell them how you feel. So O'Reilly got all this, and he's freaking out. He's mad and everything else. And the first thing that came to his mind was, who owns this Negro? How do I get this guy? And so the first thing he did was he spent an entire week working to get me fired. Everything he did, I've never seen this in my life. It was the weirdest thing. My sister called me from Louisville. She said, Coco? Coco's my nickname. She said, Coco, they are talking about you like a dog on the O'Reilly Factor. And so I turned on, it was just surreal. And I saw what they were doing. They were basically saying, we're going to smoke him out. They were attacking my university. They did an ambush interview with my chancellor and all these other things. My chancellor didn't even know who I was up until that happened. And the only thing that allowed me to remain firm was the fact that I talked to my brother and I said, okay, if I lose this job, am I going to be okay? Are we still going to be able to pay the bills? Do we have money coming in? He said, yeah, we got money coming from here, here, and here. It'll be hard. It'll be tough, but we're going to be all right. So when people ask me, are you going to apologize for what you said? I said, no, I ain't apologizing. So I was very bold. But it's not because I'm a bold person or a brave person. Maybe a little bit, but not entirely. It was because I knew that I wasn't going to lose my livelihood in the event that I lost my job. I knew I was going to be okay economically. So sometimes it's not a matter of being a brave person. It's a matter of being in a position where you can be brave. Because so many of us end up in situations where when it's time to stand up, somebody's standing over top of us saying, sit your butt right back down. And you do it because you know that if you speak up, you're going to lose the ability to feed your children. There's no greater amount of power I can have over another man or woman than for that person to know that I'm the reason your children get to eat every day. So it's not just about the money, it is about the power created from freedom. That's what I implore you to remember. The dignity from ownership. Knowing that you don't have to bow and scrape and be somebody that you're not in order to make $1. Those days are gone. Those days of having to go to work at a job that you hate. Those days should be gone. I grew up thinking that going to work should never be fun. I never saw an adult get up and say, ooh, I'm going to work today. Never. It was always like, yeah, I got to go back to work. Yeah, these people, they look, this is what they're doing to me on my job. I was used to that. But that slavery is not something that we have to accept. There are opportunities to break away from that. Next slide, please. F. S stands for save and invest. Now, the important thing to understand, and you've heard the phrase, save your money so your money can save you. One of the things that is consistently taught, not just to black people, but really to all American consumers, is this very simple idea. Your job is not to be a saver and an investor. They don't want you to do that. Your job is to be a spender and a consumer and a borrower. That's what you're supposed to do. Because a big chunk of the American economy is built upon excessive, addictive, impulsive consumption. That is why they will never teach financial literacy on a mass scale in a public school. Maybe certain schools will, but it won't be something implemented by the federal government. Because if people learn how to keep their money, then they're not going to go out and spend it. So that would be something that you would be responsible for teaching your children. Understand that as people of color, many of us have been raised and taught to believe that when we get a tax refund check, we're supposed to go spend it. We're taught to believe that buying certain brands is going to make us a better person. We're taught to believe that if I go to school and I work hard and I make mom and daddy proud and become a doctor, lawyer, professor, or any of these other things that make you feel like you're better than other people, I'm supposed to drive a certain car, wear certain clothes, live in a certain kind of house. And guess what? One of the highest foreclosure rates in the country during the last recession was in a part of Prince George's County that had the highest black income in the country. These people were doing exceedingly well. The average income was in the 6 figures, and they had the highest foreclosure rate because many of them were living a lifestyle that they could not afford but felt they had to live it because they thought everybody else was living the same way, and they thought that's how they're supposed to live because I'm a doctor, lawyer, professor, Indian chief, or whatever that makes me feel like I'm supposed to be balling. So, when you talk about money and the power of money, I'm going to give you some tips on how to be a financial slave. If you want to be a financial slave, here's what you do. It's very simple. Very simple. And actually, I have been told by Pastor Cosby this was a forum for men as well, but I see we got a lot of men and women here. But it's not his fault. He didn't mess it up. I messed it up because I got the message wrong. But I think this is important for our sons to understand as well, because I am a believer that as a man, you need to be prepared to lead. You need to be strong. Woman ain't going to be attracted to no weak man who can't provide. Amen. And too many men are being raised to be grown-up versions of little boys. Can make a baby, but can't really take care of one. And unfortunately, these babies are built in America. They're built in our households. So we have to think about how are we building our little boys? How are we building them into the men they're supposed to be? So if you want to be a financial slave, here's what you do. Number one, Get as much debt as you possibly can. Every time you get a credit card, make sure you max it out. Go to school, make sure you get as many student loans as possible. Number 2, don't save any money when you get your check. Make sure you blow it all. Spend every penny. Number 3, make sure you only have one stream of income. Don't spread your income streams out. Just have one stream of income so that if you lose your job, you'll be totally screwed. Next, make sure you have really high monthly expenses. Like, do what Terrell Owens did when he played in the NFL and he was the man. Terrell Owens was spending like a fool, and I guess he thought he was going to be in the NFL until he was 90 years old or something like that. Oh, and then the other great thing he did that really worked out for him is he created a whole lot of babies mamas along the way. See that? Now, if you really want to go broke as a black man, then engage in really poor, irresponsible family planning. Because if you make enough kids with enough different women, then that will guarantee that you will never have a spare penny for the rest of your life. But see, the coin is also true on the other side as well. Single mothers have the lowest incomes in America. That's a fact. In fact, the median net worth of a black single mother is $5. I'm not kidding, $5. For white women, it's about $95,000. Black women is $5. So, poor family planning is a great way to go broke if that is what you are seeking to do. If I were you, I'd be very, very thoughtful about who I allow into my body or whose body I go into. Men, just because she's cute and she lets you have it doesn't mean you need to take it. Women, the same thing is true on your end as well. So family planning is very important because kids are expensive. We know this. Next slide, please. I'm almost done. I just got a couple more minutes. I appreciate your patience here. The last part of the cost model is T for target. Your money is your power. You don't want to spend your life giving your power away. That's true individually. That is true collectively as a community. One of the things that we have a habit of doing is we love giving our money to companies that don't even hire black people. We just do it out of habit. We don't think about it. If a black-owned business comes to us and wants $25 for a product, we're looking it up and down, and what you going to do with my $25, and oh, this product isn't good enough, and oh, it costs too much, and you charging me too much. But then we'll go right down to Kmart or Target or some other company and drop $2.50 in a second and not think anything about it. That's a weird mentality. That's a weird way of thinking. In fact, there was a man who was being really honest. Every now and then I'll meet these really honest white people who tell me all the stuff that white people talk about when black people aren't in the room. And we got good white people in the room here today, but I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, the ones who get nervous when black people are around. And one of the things that he said was, he said actually, you know, when I ran my business, he said we used to have a nickname for black people, and we called them liquid money. He said, and I said, what do you mean by liquid money? He said, well, you know how water, when you pour it in your hand, it just seeps through your hand? It's just gone. He said, black people get their money, they don't hold on to it. They give it away like that. And so, when you think about how you spend your money, always remember you're giving away your power. And at the end of the day, the goal should be to give it to people that you care about. Even if you have to pay a little bit more, support that black business. I buy almost every hip-hop artist that reaches out to me that's starting his own little record label. As long as you ain't preaching none of that crazy stuff, you're trying to do something positive, I'll buy your album even if I don't want to listen to it. Even if I think it's horrible. I'll buy it because it's $10. I can spend $10 to support a young brother trying to do something good. Let's do the same thing. Black women, you spend billions on your hair. Don't give that money to other people. My daughter does hair, and she's big on hair. She's really good too. So y'all should go check out her business one day. And she talks. She was making a joke with me, and she said, yeah. She said sometimes you go into little shops where the Koreans run the shops, and they'll tell you that the wig is really good to wear, and they've never even worn it before, right? And so there are people that are accustomed to preying on our community because our financial literacy is not what it should be. And there's a reason for that, right? For hundreds of years, we were never allowed access to wealth. We got a little bit of wealth that was taken away from us. The atrocities are really endless. Reparations are deserved. And I think that's something we should always speak about. Never let that go. Because there's no question, there's nobody alive who can look at the history of slavery in its entirety and as well as Jim Crow and everything, and mass incarceration, and not believe that reparations are not deserved. So the question you want to ask yourself, as a runaway slave, is this, and I'm almost done, I'm going to finish up here, is when you die, what are you going to leave your children? Are you leaving them a pile of debt? Are you leaving them despair? Have you engaged in such poor financial planning that people can't even afford to bury you? We've seen that. Or are you leaving them a seed, even if it's not fully developed, something for the future? I think about my grandmother, and I loved her so much. She's still alive, by the way. She just changed form. She's not here physically, but every day I wake up, every day I'm breathing, she's alive. And I remember when she passed, and I remember how precise her arrangements were. Everything down to she told us to bury her in that cardinal red dress. She was ready. We didn't have any problem paying for her funeral. She had assets that she left her children and some other cousins that needed the money. Again, all I wanted was a couple little mementos. I didn't want any of the money, but I knew that she had prepared. So all of us, when you think about what you're doing right now, I implore you to not focus so much on what you see around you, to not get discouraged as you're trying to build. When you talk to your children about money and economic empowerment, teach them the real meaning of black economic empowerment. Let's move to that next step of being who we are truly meant to be. Let's educate our children in the right way. It starts with education and economic empowerment. We teach those two things to our children, as well as good values on how to be a good person, how to make good choices. Then you never know what kind of seeds you're planting. You never know what you're building. You never know what you're creating. My grandmother never graduated from college, but my sister is a physician. My brother went to an Ivy League school. I have a PhD. That all came from the seeds that she planted in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. So let's plant some seeds and let's build something powerful. You have the foundation right here. Everything you can do here is amazing. Thank you very much.
Dr. Watkins, there's only one regret that I had with your presentation. I wish I would have had you on a Sunday morning. If the whole nation should have heard what he had to say. Absolutely phenomenal. Well, this has been a great summit, hasn't it? Have you enjoyed it? Now we move from theory to practice. And we shall start immediately. I'm so glad that our congressman is here, John Yarmouth. And we have a business we started, which is called KC's Outlet. You know about KC's, the restaurant, which is open. We also have some vendors in our Family Life Center that we want you to go by and get their information and support. But we're opening up our own boutique here at St. Stephen that will feature some of our own business persons who are members of this church. And we're going to cut the ribbon, and Congressman Yarmouth is here to help participate in that ceremony. And I'm going to ask if you will join us now at this time over in the Family Life Center, and let's see what's going on over there. Okay.